In this episode of The Art of Making, you will learn how real handmade tapestry is created. Find out more about fluid art and discover the secrets of felting and creating amazing wool products. What is a real handmade tapestry? Tapestry painting, tapestry canvas, it has feelings and passions. It is able to arouse a variety of emotions in the viewer, experiences excitement and joy. Moreover, the texture of the tapestry itself is energetically attractive. It absorbs light and gives the power of a color tone. Now we're heading to the workshop, where we will talk about the creative behind-the-scenes process, about doubts and discoveries, disappointments and achievements. In the meantime, let's learn a little bit of history. The tapestry weaving technique is the same all over the world. Kazakh woven napless carpet is very similar to it. My acquaintance with the tapestry took place in Almaty while studying. I liked many types of art, but tapestry still won a special love. In 2005, thanks to my acquaintance with Batima Zaurbekova, I began to master the technique. Back then, it seemed to me that entire nature was made of tapestry. I admit, I have since realized that this is my vocation. My first exhibition took place in 2015, but it was in a hurry. I didn't have enough experience then. A couple of years later, I was lucky enough to take part in the exhibition of French low-warp tapestry of the late 15th century. I was amazed with the works I saw, and at that moment, I decided to continue low-warp tapestry in the future. Sometimes it's called tapestry, but there is still a difference between them. The development of the art of hand weaving nowadays allows you to create a tapestry that will easily fit into any interior. After all, when creating it, special weaves are used, Egyptian or Greek, a bright floral pattern, ornaments, ethnic motifs or abstractions make the tapestry unique and therefore especially valuable. Weaving of the tapestry begins from the loom. Wool and cotton threads are pulled on a horizontal bar, while linen and stretch threads are not suitable. The basis yarns are stretched vertically at a certain interval depending on the expected weaving density. The tension force of the warp yarns will affect the quality of the weave. Of course, skills are needed. After the tensioning is finished, the warp yarns are pulled together so that they do not loosen during weaving. It is at this stage that the width of the tapestry is laid. The distance between the first and the last warp thread corresponds to the size of the future canvas. The weaving of the braid collects the thread in a single plane. And then, with help of a special fork, the master pins the thread of the shuttle, weaving the edge of the tapestry. Then the edge can be sewn or bent onto the end of the subframe. A rack is pulled inside the loop, dividing the threads into even and odd ones. It allows you to adjust the degree of tension of the threads. The higher the rack is installed, the weaker the tension and vice versa. Then a sketch of the pattern is attached to the canvas from the back. Multicolored threads, intertwined with the base, repeat the composition of the drawing. During weaving, the shuttle thread passes from the front to the back. After the edge is braided, a pattern is laid between the two rows of threads, which is sewn with a needle to the edges. Having picked up the threads according to the colors, the craftsman begins weaving the tapestry. At the same time, you can work not with one, but with several shuttles of different colors, which will significantly expand the palette.
Ерте кезде оның бәрін қолдан жасаған, оны тоқпақ деп атайды.
In the old days, handmade tools, the so-called yarn mallet, were used for weaving. Now a fork is convenient and most suitable for creating a shed. During my stay in Turkey, I noticed one kind of Iranian mallet made of several knives connected to one another. Compared to a fork, it has a wider range of knives as required for weaving.
Менің қазіргі өзімнің қатты жақсы көріп жасап жүрмін.
Now I'm working on weaving a vase and the low warp tapestry technique, which is different from tapestry. This is a more laborious and painstaking work, using two needle hooks. The technique of this vase is complicated. The image is transmitted by a special weave of warp threads with shuttle threads. When weaving, only even vertical threads are captured. But a new shuttle can be introduced from anywhere. It only needs to be tied with a simple knot to the warp threads. Each color plane is made separately. After finishing one, the craftsman goes to another. In 15 minutes of work, I weave a diameter equal to the size of our finger. That is, in an hour, about 4 fingers. And as a result, in 8 hours, you only get a small section of the vase. For me, small work with tiny details is interesting. No matter how tired I am, the weaving process gives me a great pleasure. A canvas measuring 1 meter by 1.5 meters, if it has a complex pattern, takes a long time. Each craftsman independently selects the number of colors in case of a multicolored layer and the presence of small parts. The weaving of one canvas lasts several years. In recent years, artists and decorators' interest in this type of applied art increased, and it's no coincidence because warm, lively paintings made of natural materials store the touch of human hands and bring brightness to each house. In our project, we have repeatedly talked about wool felting, a unique way of making a canvas. This type of folk art, which has come down to us from the depths of centuries, is widely used in the modern world, preserving and developing its traditions and improving technologies and forms of production. Today, together with craftswoman Natalya Timchenko, we will learn how to create a drawing on a felt and make a piece of clothing.
Я убеждена, что все-таки войлок родился в нашей степи. Все-таки это из кочевников пришло к нам.
I'm convinced that felt was born in our steppe. It came to us from the nomads. Well, of course, all this was for practical life, to keep oneself warm, for other household needs. But felt also can heal. This was a natural doctor.
Поэтому
Therefore, even now, the tradition of felt milling has been preserved. But today, it's not just for footwear, felt pad, carpets, or rugs. This type of craft began to develop more and more, and now we wear felt almost everywhere, both on our heads and on our feet. We make jewelry, wonderful brushes. You can make a lot of things from felt, starting from socks and hats, and ending with a coat or even a fur coat. That's why I believe that felt is now very popular. Traditions revived.
Поэтому я считаю, что войлок у нас сейчас очень популярен, возрождается очень.
We asked Natalya Timchenko to show the process of making a headdress from felt with an abstract pattern. For this, the master uses wet milling.
Мокрое валяние – это когда мы берем шерсть, раскладываем.
Wet milling is when we take wool, lay it out, then we use soap and water as a sheaf to mill wool together.
Шерстинок между собой. Мы применяем мыло и воду.
So we're starting to make a product. Natalya uses different types of wool, both domestic and foreign.
Сначала я выкладываю волокна в одном направлении.
At first, I lay the fibers in one direction. Since the wool sits along the length of the fiber, it will shrink itself. And our hat has edges.
А шапочка у нас имеет концы.
Wool always tends to stretch along the edges, so on all open edges we use this method.
На всех открытых краях мы используем такой метод.
We lay out wool parallel to the edge, and then the wool is milled, and the edge is pulled up. It acts like a ribbing.
Подтягивает, она как резиночка действует. Вот. Поэтому сначала.
Therefore, first we do a certain number of rows in one direction, and then we apply any layout. There are also a lot of layouts.
Раскладок существует тоже очень много. Шапочку мы выложили шерстью, теперь мы будем мочить. Для этого я накрою.
We put the hat with the wool, now we will soak it. To do this, I will cover it with a net. There's water with soap in this bottle. I pour it like this.
Так, полили, теперь я ее немножко придавлю.
As soon as we're done with watering, I push it a little bit. We release all the bubbles and make sure that the wool is wet everywhere. We remove the net carefully, hold the edges so that they stay put and don't move with the net.
Когда мы разложили шерсть полностью с двух сторон шапочки,
When we completely spread the hats on both sides, we lay out the viscose. I took a black one.
и каждую прядочку укладываю аккуратненько.
I pull the strand and I lay each neatly. I make a black cast.
Скажем, заливку черным цветом. Теперь я сбрызну это водичкой.
Now I'll spray it with water.
Немножко придавлю.
I apply a little pressure. It can be done through a net. It can be done through a film.
И теперь вот эти краешки
And now I bend these edges.
аккуратно. А теперь приступаем к самому интересному. Декор.
And now we're going to do the most interesting part, decoration.
Ниточки шелковые, вычесанные.
I have wonderful silk strings combed in a tape, and I will tear them off and lay them out.
И как-нибудь укладываю. Мы разложили декор, закрыли сеточкой, смочили.
We laid out the decoration, covered it with a net, wet it with soap, water, pressed all this with fingers and made sure that there were no air bubbles anywhere. And I think there's not enough soap in my layout. I take a piece of soap and rub it on the layout.
Наша шапочка уже свалялась, выпала.
Our hat is ready, we rinsed it. Now turn it to the front side and see what a beauty we have. And it turned out really beautiful. A hat that is warm and durable to wear will serve its future owner for a long time. Natalya Timchenko makes various products from felt: clothes, bags, hats, and jewelry. For example, here are these cute brushes made by dry felting technique.
С помощью иголочки.
Using the dry method, we felt wool with a needle. Felt is dry, it's very plastic. That is, we can do anything by dry milling. It's like modeling clay. You just need practice, and you can make whatever you want. Sometimes these two techniques, wet and dry milling, are combined in one product, as for example in the making of this flower brush.
Шерсть тактильно очень приятная.
The wool is very smooth to touch. If you like wool, you will enjoy even the very process of laying wool. It's like meditation. You put every wool in a row, evenly strand by strand. Then when you see the result, of course, it keeps you up. A simple piece of wool turned into a wonderful thing. It's very interesting.
Кусок шерсти, а на выходе получилась какая-то замечательная вещь. Это очень интересно.
Today in Kazakhstan, more and more women choose the profession of a jeweler. They create their own brands, cooperate with fashion houses. The result is jewelry that you want to wear, jewelry that helps you feel special. Our hero today is Natalya Timchenko. She has a gust of what kind of decoration will fit into each woman's wardrobe and will match the rhythm of her life.
Я работала на основной работе в банке, но всегда меня тянуло к прекрасному. Вообще у меня есть.
I worked at the bank, but I was always drawn to beauty. I have a secondary art education. I graduated from the School of Art when I was younger.
Подруга, мы стали этим заниматься, но все-таки мне больше хотелось что-то создавать именно вот.
And I had a plan to make bracelets from natural stones. My friend and I started doing this.
Ничего. И как пришла буквально полтора.
But I always wanted to create something from nothing. Just a year and a half ago, I came up with the idea to make brushes, where I was able to apply my drawing skills.
То, что я люблю рисовать, именно вот художественные мои навыки.
Natalya creates jewelry in the fluid art technique. This is a new direction of abstract painting. In translation, it means liquid art. The technique is a special kind of abstraction in which there are no certain subjects.
Особенность техники в том, что ее еще называют.
The peculiarity of the technique is that it's also called a random painting. Paints flowing into each other create unusual silhouettes and transitions, and patterns are made in a very random way. Visitors of exhibitions see horses, some see birds, waves, or something else in these patterns. I think the most important advantage of technology is that it has no frames. It gives people an opportunity to fantasize.
Я не ставлю такие рамки, что вот я нарисовала только что-то определенное. начинается, конечно, с идеи. Форму придумала.
It all starts with an idea. I designed the form myself, draw a sketch and order a base of wood in the workshop. Then there is the process of painting with paints. This is liquid acrylic. There is a special composition for mixing paint, so it doesn't lose color and it has the right thickness. Then there is the drying stage. The paint is cleaned and dried well. The fixation uses glossy jewelry resin. The entire process takes 9 days.
Получается, так, чтобы хорошо просохло.
Acrylic paints appeared in the 1940s and many artists immediately fell in love with it for such qualities as quick drying and persistence. And in addition, acrylic does not fade and does not crack over time.
Украшение глянцевое для сохранения глянца, то есть не стоит в общей шкатулке.
It's better to store the decoration separately from the others in a box to preserve its gloss and to keep it out of the sun. Although the resin is of a good quality, but it has 1-year guarantee. But if you keep away from the sun, then it will retain properties for up to 5 years.
Хранить как бы в хорошем, в закрытом, дает 5 лет гарантии.
Products in the fluid art technique are a reflection of the inner world of a person and the state of its soul. To create an accessory, you do not need to have special drawing skills. The process of applying paints is similar to meditation. Amazing patterns, colorful spots, elegant lines, and intricate forms are mesmerizing and almost hypnotizing.
Вдохновение, знаете, наверное, пришло прошлым годом таким тяжелым.
Inspiration came to me last year during quarantine, when we all started covering our faces and wearing masks. I wanted more open faces. After that, I made up this brush. Brush is an accessory of self-expression. It carries different characters of people. In the fall, I presented my first collection. People liked it very much. This time, another series was created. But I have already chosen the images of famous people: Pushkin, Chekhov, Freud, the heroes of famous films. Also, people like these brushes. Everyone began to recognize and buy their favorite characters.
Когда я все-таки создаю украшения, я обращаю внимание, какие оттенки в моде сейчас, да, какие цвета, потому что, то есть отличается украшение мое от того, что...
When designing jewelry, I certainly study what shades are in trend now.
Любит молодежь, да, вот черный цвет, это прям в последнее время очень такое распространенное в одежде, монохромный.
Now, for example, black is in trend, especially among young people.
Броши лица, чтобы, как бы тоже для, по сути, чтобы им тоже это было интересно.
For them, I create a lot of black jewelry.
Чтобы и молодежь, то есть как бы выбирала.
But I also try to create colorful brushes, as fashionable.
И по оттенкам, которые вот цветные броши, там тоже смотрю, чтобы было там, что сейчас люди любят.
A woman who chooses jewelry created by our hero doesn't want to buy a sparkling jewel that reflects her status. She wants to wear interesting, non-trivial things. The case where choice is not determined by the price. I think now many people prefer concise, restrained, and neat decorations because they're easy to mix and combine. People who purchase handmade jewelry truly love them and try to buy more, since such jewelry gives more emotion than the usual ones. We use not only materials when making them, but also invest a piece of our soul and love. I appreciate when people understand it. It brings me even more joy when people share their happy emotions. I'm sure that handmade things will never go out of fashion, since people need not only jewelry, but also emotions.